I have a Montgomery Wards Christmas 1977 catalog here. Now this catalog, I had two brothers and my uncle. We were all the same age, within 5 years, but about the same age. And we always were in high anticipation of getting this catalog because you could go through each year when it came out. You could see what toys and games were coming out, so you can make your list of what you wanted for Christmas. My parents and grandparents always, they had a fit getting us to go out and get the mail, except when this came out. It usually came out at the end of September, beginning of October. We had a Montgomery Wards not far from where we lived, and we used to go in there all the time and shop, visit Santa Claus in there. It was just a great, nice, big store. But this catalog had everything in it that you want to look at. They had appliances, electronics, home decor, knickknacks, even a candy shop, but mostly toys. So today we're going to look at this catalog, not in full, mostly for the toys, but I am going to stop along the way at some pages because there are some really cool things in here that I just want to touch on. So sit back, relax, and let's have a look at this. So right inside the cover here, you have exclusively at Wards, Bally's, Captain Fantastic, and the Brown Dirt Cowboy pinball machine. Now this is regulation size, but is not, you would never have found this at the arcade. They did have a Captain Fantastic, but this isn't the one. This was made for home use. You can see down here there's no coin slot or anything. And did have electronic scoring, but it was an older style of pinball machine. This is what you had back in the 70s, this type of pinball machine. Retail for $649, which by today's standards for a pinball machine is not a lot, but back then, 1977, $649 was a lot. Even has a picture of Elton John here. The first page in here has the Bally Arcade game system. I remember seeing this one. I never had one, but I remember seeing it. $269. Includes the game 280 Zap, which was this one down here. It's sort of like Night Driver. It was an actual arcade game, as was Gunfight here. And I remember playing these in the arcade. And they were included, the 280 Zap anyhow, with the Bally Arcade game. You could get the Gunfight separate. And it had a few other games here. Checkmate, Tornado Baseball, and two different, like a math and a calculator. Two different things you use for adding, subtracting, that sort of thing. Alright, so I'm only stopping here at women's clothing because you see this woman, she's got this jumpsuit on. Now in the 70s, these were big. If you ever watch like Charlie's Angels or any of the shows back in the 70s, women oftentimes wore these type of outfits. You can see some of the different hairstyles and everything they had back in the 70s. Just a unique time and some unique clothing. Alright, now we're jumping to the men's fashions. You can see this outfit. If you ever watch a $6 Million Man, that sort of looks like Lee Majors. It's not, but it sort of looks like him. But that was a style back then. And this over here, I noticed, this looks a lot like Robert Redford. But I can't imagine him doing ads in a catalog because he was a big star even back then, so it looks like him. But some of the men's styles back from the 70s. And I had to get these pants in. I mean, look at these. They're stylish back then. These plaid pants, I mean, they're weird looking today. And they had some of these over here that were just different colors. And had that weird style like you see here. But they were really big back in the 70s also. We are in the middle of the catalog, but already we're hitting some toys. They kind of snuck these throughout the catalog. I guess if parents are looking through, they can see what toys are available. This looks interesting. I've never seen one before. $37.88 was a price on it. But it looked like it had different panels you put on and maybe played some kind of different games with, mathematics. I do remember this one. It's the TI's Little Professor. So I actually had one of these for a while. It was a lot of fun. It was a learning device, a calculator, but it also would give you math problems, and you could solve them and kind of play a game with it. And then they had the National Kid Race and Racers, and the one with the owl here I remember seeing. I don't remember seeing this one, but this was big. I never had one, but I remember seeing those. And we slide right over here. They have calculators, a TI 1680 with LED lighting in it, the LED face as opposed to the LCD, which was just coming out. And for those of you who remember, they even sold typewriters. So the reason I stopped here is they have gumball machines. And when we were kids, we wanted gumball machines. These things were awesome. So they had, ones that were tabletop, maybe had a stand with it. Different varieties as far as the body goes, square or round. This one here is shaped like Bugs Bunny. And so this is usually what we got. We got one like this. Now, Montgomery Wards also had candy that they sold. They had a display in the center of one of the drive aisles, I remember. Probably maybe 10 to 12 feet long by maybe 6 to 8 feet wide. They had large drive aisles, by the way, but they sold candy. They even had their own brand here. And they sold other brands like Brock's, for example. They did have nuts that they roasted right in the store. And sometimes they put that like candy coating over top of them. They had the candy coated peanuts and walnuts and that sort of thing. You could smell that through the whole store, man. It smelled so great. And if you're interested, they also had everybody's favorite fruitcake. This page here I stopped on because they had these cool label makers when we were kids. They had little character heads. And when we were kids, man, we used to love having these things. You could label up anything. But, they had, looks like a dog, a wacky racer looking guy, maybe a caterpillar. I seem to remember having maybe the dog. Could have been something different. I'm not positive. A long time ago. All right, so they had these football helmet radios, which were pretty cool back then. We liked the Colts. They were in Baltimore at that point, so we had the Colt ones. Really big with the kids back then. Also, they had these little CBs. This is an AM sing-along radio with a 23-band CB receiver. CBs were big in the 70s, all right? And we had a radio not like this, sort of like this. You could actually, it was more of a toy, but you could actually, send out and receive messages from people. You could actually talk to people on these things. They also, way back then, had these sing-along radios. See, they have some character ones up top there. These were big because, all of us kids, when we were kids, wanted to be a singer. Some of us were better at it than others. I'm not one of the ones that was better at it. You come down here, is one of the creepiest things that they had then, laughing heads. Now, you remember, the Bozeman heads are usually, they have like maybe a sailor or a pirate or something, and they're kind of cool to hang on your wall. These things actually moved. You would pull either the scarf on the male or female here, and it would spit water at you and start laughing. The face would move. It did have a reservoir for water, so it would spit on you. This is like true nightmare fuel when we were kids. No Christmas could be complete without a beer can rack, so you could show off all your beer cans. They had one that was either across the wall, looks like it folded because it shows you here it could fold, but you could actually display beer cans on this rack, and I guess you had it, and maybe if you had a rec room or a bar or something, you'd have this displayed. Here's another snuck-in toy page in between other things the parents would be looking at. In particular, you have this skating Dorothy Hamill doll. Now, Dorothy Hamill, if you don't know, is an Olympic gold medalist in skating. You had different costumes you could choose from, and when she was on this little base here, she would actually spin to make it like she's skating. Wards also sold fiber optic lights, lava lamps. They had these cool can lamps. Now, they had black light, then they had these flicker bulb types. So the bulb was, so big, and had a filament that would just flicker back and forth in it. Really cool and, really groovy for the hippie people back then. They were neat, though. They had disco lights, strobe lights. And they had these black light posters. Now, you could get a black light, and these posters had colors in them, like neon colors that would glow when the light hit them. Now, here they have different, looks like ships and animals and skateboard wizard. They also had ones that had bands, like the Who or the Rolling Stones. So these are really cool to have, especially if you want your bedroom to have a little pop. These posters would do it. Now, way back when, we had tube televisions. There's still some out there. These are all black and white TVs. You can see 147, 127, 97. Now, of course, this was smaller than this one. That was a lot of money for TVs back then. Again, you're talking 1977. These were high price for then. Nowadays, you got a television for 147. You can get a flat screen for that, maybe even cheaper, and it's a lot better television. We also had these console televisions. This one was almost $690. 25-inch for back then was a big television. Sometimes these drawers would open, you could store things. And this thing was nothing but a dust nightmare because a lot of people, like my grandparents had one of these. They would put knickknacks and stuff on top. Required dusting like every other day. Theirs had a remote also. Now, remotes back then aren't like they are now. They were called clickers because they clicked. So you could turn the channel up and you could turn the channel back and maybe control the volume with some of them. But that was it. You know, not like the remotes today. Way, way back before streaming, before CDs, even pretty much before cassette tapes, you had these stereo units. Now this unit is a big 60-inch wide stereo console with an 8-track player. If you know 8-tracks, you know, they're kind of clunky, but they were modern. And here you have another stereo here, and you see the 8-track slot right there. So you put your bulky 8-track tape in there and play your music from your 8-track. Or record if you prefer that. Here we have the big boy CBs. Now these are ones you would put, I believe, in your car. They look like they're too small to be a bass unit. But they had different styles here. You can get up to 4,000 frequencies on this 25-watt 2-meter for almost $400. So, you know, a lot of people use these. Truck drivers use them to communicate back then. They still use them today. But people got into this, you know, just regular people like you and I, and they would get into these CBs and talk to people. You'd have to get an antenna for your car roof to make this work effectively. But they were popular then. And we skip right over here. You could buy records, like this Elvis record, or 8-tracks, and that's what your 8-track look like. You have Fats Domino. Also, you have, it says Rockin' Originals. Perry Como down here, country one up there, Roger Williams. So you had all kinds of different singers and bands, album, and 8-track tapes. So I stopped on this page because they have these weather radios. It's a deluxe multi-band. My grandfather had one of these on his dining room table. His dining room and living room kind of connected. You know, he had a large living room and a large dining room, but there was no space in between. It wasn't separate. And he had one of these on his table. You could pick up CB, you could pick up TV, and they use that primarily for the television. AM, FM, weather, aircraft, marine, just different things you could pick up with this. So at night, you know, he turned it when we kids were in bed, because I spent time with my grandparents for a while. He would turn the volume down on the television and just turn his TV radio on that was right next to him so he could hear what was on the television. So here we go, Super Trucker Pinball Machine. Now this was as tall as a regular pinball machine, not as much detail as the Elton John one, and a little bit cheaper at $499. So again, if you had some money, you probably had one of these, but they were still pretty expensive for back then. And I just want to show you these bikes over here. They have some regular looking bikes, but then they have these with this seat. They're called banana seats. And we were kids, we rode bikes like this. You know, most of the bikes have seats sort of like this one or that one up there. But a lot of us kids rode this bikes with the banana seats on them. Wards also sold BB guns. You can see a few different ones here on these 2 pages. Well, that's actually a crossbow, but they did have BB guns. Now, as kids, we never could have these because my mother was afraid we'd shoot her eye out. So the movie Christmas Story, pretty accurate on that point. One of the other things we liked as kids are slot car racers. Now they had this one for $44.99, this one for $28.88. These things were cool. You could race. The only downside is when you went too fast around the curves, the car would generally fly off the track. You'd have to reset it. But these were big, and it looks like the one up top here has maybe 4 slot lanes. It does. Okay, so you have 4 controllers right there. This one down here looks like it only had 2. You can only race 2, but you did have a little crisscross area here, which is kind of weird. So this particular toy here is weird because you pull the string, it would talk, and the head would move up and down right up here. Make it look like he's moving his mouth. These are more for smaller children, you know, 5, 6 years old maybe at the oldest. But I remember those, and really cool. And you can actually still find these sometimes in antique stores. Then you had some action figures. This is Happy Days. So you have Potsy there, Ralph Malph, Richie, Fonzie. And right next to them are the superheroes, DC Comics, Batman, Robin, Superman. Spider-Man is actually Marvel now, but I guess back then they incorporated him in with DC, I suppose. You have the Joker and you have the Flash there also. And we come right down here. And for you science people out there, science fiction people, you might remember Space 1999. They also had a ship and some action figures for that TV show. Now these are some record players for teens and for kids. You can see here you got like a little sing-along with some characters. You got the Fonz. This one I'm going to assume is probably for smaller children. It's all plastic. You have this one down here to actually you can play records and have a little light show on the back of the on the case there on the cover. And I remember these as close and play. So you put your record in, you close it down, needles on the top of the top part here, and it would play the record. We have some more action figures here. The $6 Million Man, Steve Austin, Oscar Goldman, two characters there. Come down a little bit here. Now these are interesting here. Stretch Armstrong, and they had this monster Stretch Armstrong. Now this thing, just for the head, if you can find it, people pay good money for that head because there weren't as many of these made as there were these. The bodies pretty much have like some sort of syrupy type liquid goo in them, and they would eventually break, this rubber, so it would break and the stuff would start oozing out. If you had one with both the head and the body, it'd be worth probably a mint, but most of the bodies are gone, so the head is still worth a lot of money if you have one of those. Another TV show from the 70s, SWAT, and here's some action figures for that, and some vehicles, and even walkie-talkies. Then you had another one here, Starsky and Hutch, which was also a big show on television back then. A couple accessories with that. And finally, Emergency, which was a show about firemen and paramedics. And again, you have some other accessories and things for that one. And here's some action figures from another TV show, The Rookies, police show from way back in the 70s. Here's Welcome Back, Kotter. It's got a record with TV voices, I guess, and you had your little figures here with a little classroom you could get with it. Comedy back in the 70s. Actually, John Travolta, who is right there, he played Vinnie Barbarino in the show. He went on to become a pretty big movie actor. Still doing stuff today. Here you have Shogun Warriors. Now, I do believe that these are like pretty collectible also. They're back from the 70s, but I do believe people still collect these. They still hold a pretty decent value if you have one of these. Look over here, I wanted to show you this. Now, this was something I had. You fly this helicopter, you had your little controls under here. You would pick up this basket. You tried to land on the pad. So it was a little bit of a skill type thing. The helicopter actually had fly. It had this cable that was connected so it wouldn't like fly away. But it was a little bit of a skill game. Now, we were kids. Everybody had to have this Evel Knievel stunt cycle. They did have a little van they put out a little bit later, but you'd put the motorcycle on here, and it had a handle on this other side, and you'd rev it, and as soon as you got to go, the motorcycle would take off. And we used to set up little ramps and things to make Evel Knievel jump over, Matchbox cars or action figures or whatever. So this was really big with all the kids back then. And a little further down, you have this Whistling Mr. Machine. Now, this thing, you turned it on, it moved around. I believe its mouth moved, open and close, and it would just make, whistling sounds. But again, a lot of kids liked this. It was like a little robot, and kids actually liked having one of these. So I found this in here, thought it was cool. It's Red Fox, the comedian. He used to be in Sanford & Son. And this is really cool because he spouts off 9 different wisecracks in his own voice. Fabric body type doll. But I thought that was kind of cool because Sanford & Son was a really cool show. And this guy was a really funny person. So this page has some like electronic games like this Comp 4 here. He also had a couple other games, Triple Up and Hot Tomato. Those weren't electronic, but they have this one. And you come down here. Now, these Mattel games are always big, in particular this football game. This was something that everybody wanted to have. $34.49, so it was a little expensive. They put out this auto race game a little bit later, but this was one that everybody wanted to have. This was such a cool game back then. And it was like, it was like futuristic almost. It was like state of the art. So really cool game. And just found this in here. I wanted to show this to you. And these 2 pages here have lots of cool games on them. We'll start over here with this one, Jaws. The object was he had all this stuff in his mouth, the shark. You'd use this hook to try to get it out. If the shark's jaws clamped, you lose. So it's kind of like sooner or later jaws are going to snap, but you're trying to get all this stuff out of the mouth as much as you can before the other person you're playing against gets, more of the stuff out than you do. They have this pinball machine. Now this is one we could have afforded, $24.88. You can see there's just deluxe electronic pinball. Nothing fancy about it, but it was cool to have when we were kids. This one I actually had. It's called Blip, and used to be that you had these 1, 2, 3 buttons, and this little light inside would just kind of go back and forth. Now it was on a mechanical type thing. It lit up. You had to push whatever button you thought was going to land before it landed. So it was kind of like Pong, but you had these 3 buttons, and when it got past, you score a point. The other person, was down a point. So that was cool to have also. And then you have these shooting galleries here. This one used, I believe it was some sort of beam of light. So you use that one and you shot these targets here. This one was a magic shot. So they had BBs down here that sat in this little area here. You'd shoot them, try to hit the targets. When you're done, you just tilted the machine or the game forward. All the BBs would go back in here. The gun had a magnet. It would pick those BBs up and it would actually fire in and shoot those targets. So that was kind of a cool thing to have also. Now this is a little shooting gallery. It was battery operated, so the BBs you'd shoot them up, you'd hit your targets up here. They'd roll back down, go back in through the gun, so you could shoot them out again. So that also was a cool thing to have back then. $18.94 for that, so it wasn't really expensive, but, wasn't exactly cheap either for that time. Now these 2 pages here, again, had games that we were kids we really wanted to have, and some of them we owned back then, but we'll start up here in the corner. They have this rabbit hunt. So this little rabbit, battery operated, would run around and you try to shoot it with these suction cup bullets. Never had one of those. They did have these little pocket games, however. We did have some of these. They had a baseball. I think that's the one I had. Maybe this little pinball type deal here. But again, some of these you'd wind them up and they would move. Some of them you just shot and had a spring. Some of them were battery operated. It depended. I think these were all like a wind-up type deal. I don't think they actually took batteries. And you have this game called Aerial Aces, and battery operated, and you had little planes would fly, and you'd shoot, and if you hit them, this little thing would light up. So kind of like a projection type deal, but really a cool game. And I remember games like that when I was a kid. They were fun to play. I'm going to come over here to these wonderful waterfalls. Now, we had these as kids. We had this, and then you had these ones down here. And I remember having the one with the hippo, and I think this one was a crab. I think we actually had both, those of us that were kids then. And they were both for $4.66, so they weren't a bad price. But these were a little bit more, $3.99 each, and they had one where you land the balls like tic-tac-toe, and one where they had little like pegs, and you try to get these little rings. You'd shoot them up, they were in water, and you try to land them on these little pegs here. You also had this thing called Tin Can Alley. It was a light beam type game. It had a gun. You had the little cans on top, and you shoot these targets, and if you shot them, the can would fall off the back like you shot the can. But you're aiming for these little targets down here. Battery operated, really neat game. We had one of those also when we were kids. And finally, they had this football, and I don't know if you've ever seen these football games, but they have these little football players on bases. They have a little magnetic football-shaped magnet that you put on top, and you line all your people up, and you start it, and all they do is vibrate and move across the board there. You really, I don't know how you played this, because it never really was a playable game exactly, you know what I mean? You just kind of put the football players on, they'd vibrate. If one touched the other one that had the football, it was a down. It was kind of a complicated game and never really made sense to me. these two pages have board games. I just wanted to point out a couple. I mean, there are some that you know already, like Operation and Battleship and Mousetrap. These are still around. Monopoly, Scrabble. But they had one, Welcome Back, Kotter, for the show Welcome Back, Kotter. You come down here, they have one for Benji, a movie about a dog back in the 70s. Happy Days. The Donnie Marie Osmond TV game show. There's one over here, Pink Panther. Right there, Pink Panther. These are all based on cartoons, TV shows, you know, as opposed to games like Sorry and Payday that are still around, and Risk. These are still around today. These had a couple games in this section here that were TV shows and cartoons, so kind of unique. And this is the back of the book here, and this is what we kids craved back then. These are what we had for video games. You had this one here. It had a gun with it, and you could shoot the target up here. It also had this little paddle type deal. You could play games like hockey, tennis, racquetball, and single handball. So Pong was a big game back then. The tennis was sort of like Pong. Okay, in this particular unit, it was looks like it was almost $80 regularly, on sale for $60, so $20 off. You had this one over here, same deal. It had tennis, hockey, handball, highlight. But the thing with this is that it was in color. So you see everything had color on the different screen backgrounds and whatever. So that was big for then. And this one was $44.44. But it was big for back then because most of the TV game systems were like this one. They're black and white. Now this one down here, I had one of these for a while. It's Tank Battle. You see you have Combat, Night Battle, Camouflage, and Robot Battle. So you had two players. Each would have the joysticks here that would control your tank. The fire button's on top there. You can select your game right here from the center. But this was really cool. Again, in black and white, not in color. But really a cool system for back then. I mean, this was like state of the art then. You come up to this one. It just says arcade. It's got a gun. It's got a steering wheel. It's got different games that you could get for it. Like you had racing. You had this shooting game here. You had other games you could purchase for it, with the pinball ones up top. You had this, I guess it's sort of like a hockey type game here. It does say shooting gallery, shoot the bear, and shooting gallery. So I don't understand. Shoot the bear and shooting gallery. So I'm reading it twice. So I guess that's a bear you're shooting. I guess. I mean, it doesn't look like a shooting gallery to me. But it had all these different games in it. It looks like it had cartridges. You could actually switch up. I think your cartridge actually went right on top here. I think that little silver thing up there is a cartridge, but interchangeable. And that was, again, state of the art for 1977. And finally down here you have this Telstar Galaxy. Tennis, football, hockey, soccer, basketball, handball. Looks like, again, it's in color. 48 game combination based on 6 challenging sports. 2 remote control joysticks, which right there, and built-in rotary controls, which are right there. 87.88, again, state of the art for back then. I hope you enjoyed this look through of this old Montgomery Wards catalog. I'd like to thank my uncle for letting me use this. It was because of him that I made this video and I had this catalog in my possession. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. That would be totally awesome. Important to put this out in time for the holiday season. Hope you have a happy holiday, and please join us next time.